There's no way to really just arrest your way through all of the offenders. There's literally at the National Center, we receive millions of child exploitation reports.
NCMEC started as a center for missing children. How and why did you develop your organization to also include the dissemination of child sexual abuse material?
Sure. Our founders at the National Center began when their son was murdered. And so they took up a cause of really focusing on missing children. That was their initial hope. However, over the years, since that began in the early 1980s, the child exploitation issue has really become such a worldwide global problem that the National Center began focusing more and more on child exploitation. So our history started with missing children, with the murder of our founder's young son in Florida, and then to our present time focusing quite heavily on child exploitation. And our 35-year history has grown to include now looking at all the issues on the global issue of child exploitation as well.
You have an extensive background within law enforcement. What do you think is the most important work going forward?
Well, law enforcement's an important part of the issue of the global child exploitation problem. I always have said that when we do our work at the National Center, we still need law enforcement to go out and do the case investigations, all of the interviews, and maybe ultimately make an arrest of an offender. So it's very, very important to have the law enforcement involved. But right now, I see the world as public-private partnerships. It's working more collaboratively with technology companies, working with industry, working with law enforcement, working with NGOs. There's no way to really just arrest your way through all of the offenders. There's literally at the National Center, we receive millions of child exploitation reports. So there's no way that law enforcement alone can do it. But my background in law enforcement has allowed me to see the world from both what happens on the offender side, where we have children who are being abused or sexual assaults, all types of criminal activity, and now working at a nonprofit like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, I'm able to see how we can complement law enforcement and work closely with them and how they can work with us to make the world safer for children.
The US has mandatory reporting for all online service providers. Shouldn't this also include all the businesses and if they are finding child sexual abuse material within their own IT environment?
I would like to see it as part of a mandatory requirement for companies of all kinds to use technology services to be able to detect child exploitation. And you're right, in the United States there is a federal law that requires all the internet service providers, when they discover material on their platform, to report it. They're not required to go looking for it, but they are required to report it if they find that it's happening. But on the private side, it would be, I'm sure, a great public policy debate, a privacy debate, whether or not individual companies could be required to use it. But it would make sense that the more companies would use some type of technology to be able to detect any type of criminal activity or behavior, because it is a crime to abuse children and produce or send that material. So I think it would make sense to do that, but I am sure it would be probably debated and contested around the globe, as each country has different privacy issues.